Welcome to the Perfect Life Awakening Show, hosted by Royce Morales. Royce has been a transformational facilitator, teaching groundbreaking, spiritually based courses for more than 4 decades. She is the author of 3 books about her teachings. Join Royce as she takes you on a journey into how to live your best life and find your true purpose through discovering the origins of subconscious, disempowering notions and releasing them. She talks with experts and inspiring people just like you who learned to trust their intuitive inner wisdom, which led to life-changing shifts. Today, her guests live an empowered existence and are helping change the world to a higher consciousness place based on truth and love. You deserve to awaken to, align with, and embody your true self and live a life filled with love. Transform yourself from triggered to empowered and create your perfect life. Here is your host, Royce Morales.
Hello, welcome to the Perfect Life Awakening Show. I'm so glad you're here. You might have noticed that I seem to be having a lot of people on my show lately that are talking about near-death experiences. Honestly, I must admit, I must admit that it's one of my obsessions. I've been obsessed about understanding what happens to these bodies after they are no longer functioning. What happens to our spirit, I should say. We know what happens to the body. Oh, now my dog is going to join in. Give her a minute. She'll calm down. Sorry. Gigi. Oh, okay. She's protecting the world here. Perfect timing. Here, Gigi.
Well, you know, Royce, animals are really good at seeing disembodied spirits. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that the fact that we're having an interview about near-death experiences and
Yes.
communicating with those who have passed on and made that transition already.
She is.
I think your dog must be seeing a plethora of them just floating
She's
around.
actually seeing somebody walking a dog out there. So yeah.
Well, there's that too. Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay, Gigi. Anyway, as I was saying, yes, I'm rather obsessive about trying to understand what happens when we die. And my sense of it is everybody's curious. I don't see how anybody could not be curious about that. How could you not if you're a human? And I find that one of the ways that we are learning, finally, listening to people that have had near-death experiences, because it's kind of coming into the mainstream. It used to be, oh, that's so weird, or we don't talk about that, or it's a sci-fi movie or whatever. But I find that now that so many people, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll introduce you in a minute, Scott, but so many people are actually coming back from that state. It's like, I read that 5 to 10% of the population has had at least one near-death experience. So that's a lot of people. And I think the medical profession helping us live longer and come back from being almost dead, I think that has a lot to do with it. So, which leads me to tell you about my guest. This is Dr. Scott Taylor. And I'm just going to read this because he's got so many qualifications. It's just amazing.
Uh-oh.
He is...
Am I in trouble, Royce?
You're in big trouble. Dr. Scott is the president of the Expanded Awareness Institute that helps people that are curious about near-death experiences and shared death experiences, which I'm going to ask him about in a minute. And he helps people explore what that experience means to them and to our culture. I think that's really significant too. His goal is to make the exploration of the non-physical universe accessible to the curious and to answer questions. People have a lot of questions about this. And I love this about you. He guides people. He's a facilitator to guide people to explore their journey of transition before transition. I think that's great. And he's going to explain how he does that. He's the author of author and voice of 6 best-selling albums of guided meditations on near-death experiences called Into the Light series. He's a speaker, researcher, and guide on near-death and shared death experiences. I've said that. In the 1980s, he had a shared death experience with his girlfriend and her son in a tragic car accident, and I'm going to ask him about that too. He earned his doctorate from the University of St. Thomas. He wrote a dissertation called Near-Death Experiences, Discovering and Living in Unity. He answered the question, how do they live with what they know? Which I, again, want to ask. I have so many questions for you, Scott.
Well, that's good because I have been anticipating and waiting eagerly for our conversation, Royce. So let's get after it.
I know. All right. No more about you. Let's just get to those questions. No, I did want to say that for 35 years, he was with the Monroe Institute, which I didn't know still existed. I learned about them decades ago. So that's great. He's trained other people using binaural beats, and he'll talk about that too. That's a way to explore the non-physical world. He's also involved with, which is how I found you, he's involved with the International Association for Near-Death Studies, the INDS. He has a podcast. He does, oh my God, there's not anything he doesn't do. So let's just jump in. And I have to tell you what an honor it is to have you. You were highly recommended by several people. So I figured, wow, I've got to talk to this guy. So how did you tell us your story? How did you get involved with NDE? What happened to you? Tell us about that near-death experience. Just take it away.
I actually think that that my story is a good way to get us into this topic because it covers so many of the aspects of it. I had a shared death experience that happened in 1981. I was in love with a woman, Mary Fran, and she and her son Nolan were driving home after a beautiful day out taking sailing lessons. They became involved in this horrific car accident, and Mary Fran was killed outright, and her son Nolan had a mortal head injury. He just turned 7, and they took him immediately to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. So he had some of the best health care in the world. Well, in the intervening 6 days, there was lots of time for this very large family to accumulate and come and lend support to Nolan as he was struggling to try to save himself and stay here in this physical world. But that just wasn't going to happen. His injury was too severe. And on the morning of the 6th day, Mary Fran's oldest sister, Jannie, and I went in to do our shift. There were so many of us there, probably 50 relatives, that we divvied it up, and every 2 hours, a pair of us would go in and be with Nolan. And so Jannie and I, we had the enviable shift of 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning. And, it was nice. We had, one of his favorite books, and we went in and we read to him, and we told him about what was going on with his uncles, and they had just raided the hospital.
Was he alive at that point still? I mean,
he was alive, but he was in a coma.
Coma. Okay.
He never did come out of that coma. And so at about 4:45 in the morning, Jannie held out her hand to me and said, "We should check." And she looked at back then it was a clipboard on the end of his bed on what his vital signs were doing, and then looked at the monitors. And she said, "Scott, it's time. We should say our goodbyes." So we pulled up our chair, and we told him that he had been such a brave boy and that we loved him dearly. And if his mother should come to pick him up, remembering that Mary Fran had died 6 days before, that if Mary Fran would come and pick him up, that it was okay for him to leave and go with her. We expressed our love and affection again, and we left the room, and the next shift came in. Well, 45 minutes later, the nurse came in and said, he's starting to go. And so we all filed into this room. It was about 4 deep around the bed. I wound up having to sit on the windowsill, and we just waited. And when he flatlined, what I experienced was Mary Fran coming across the veil and scooping her son out of his physical body. And I was astonished because I was able to feel what that reunion was like, as you can only imagine, between a mother and son.
Yeah.
And then what surprised me even more was that the two of them turned to me, embraced me, and the three of us left and went to the light. And when we were in the light, it was the most extraordinary thing that you can imagine. It was ecstasy, it was peace, it was requited longing, it was this place of love and unity, and none of that seemed to matter because the three of us had a chance to express our love and affection for each other. We had a chance to say a proper goodbye. I was at work when the accident happened, so I wasn't anywhere around it. And then the three of us had a chance to be together again for a while. And then when it seemed complete, the two of them turned and went further into the light, and I came back to my physical body. So I want to pause there, Royce, and say, do you have any questions about that part? Because that's part A. There's a part B, but maybe just stop there for a second.
I guess my only question is, had that ever happened to you? Were you in any way spiritually oriented, or did you know about out-of-body experiences? This was all new to you?
Oh, Lord, yes. I grew up in southern Minnesota in a small town. I grew up in a member of a mainline Presbyterian church. This was not in my radar screen. It just was not part of, who I am. And no, it just,
Yeah.
all of this was brand new. And maybe that's why it had such an impact on me, because I was taken to a place that I could never have imagined was even possible, let alone go, yes, I can witness somebody coming across the veil. I can witness them helping another leave their physical body for the last time, and then to be able to go with them to the light. So that's why it's called a shared death experience, is because there was, in a near-death experience, usually the person who's undergoing it has some sort of physical trauma that causes their physical body to like quit working. And, it's so traumatized that they die, and then they leave their physical body, have an adventure, come back, and then they're resuscitated again. That didn't happen to me. I mean, I'm just sitting on a windowsill. I am perfectly fine, other than the fact that I'm grieving because I lost Mary Fran 6 days before. And just moments ago, there's Nolan, who has flatlined and, will never be in our lives again. So sorry, that was a long answer to a short question.
No, that's okay. And the curious part of me is, what did you say to all those people in the room? Did you tell them what had just happened?
Oh, not a chance.
Okay.
Well, first off, one of the things that the viewers need to know is that in almost every list of the characteristics of a near-death experience is this great word, ineffable.
Mm.
which is a wonderful English word for saying we don't have real good words for this. So I really was so outside of my experience and concepts that I couldn't wrap my head around it. And, um, you know, they talk about near death experiencers and fear of disclosure. I had the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, what do I do with this? How could I possibly begin to describe it to anybody else?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now would be a perfect time for me to tell part B
Part B, yes.
because it fits right in with your question. Excuse me. One of the things that surprised me about this was that I left and went with Mary Fran and Nolan was in the light and we were having communication, but I was also 100% in my physical body present in the hospital room.
Hmm.
So I didn't have a word for it then. I do now. It's called bilocation.
Mm.
I had two separate, fully functioning consciousnesses, but they were in different spots doing different things. And so I know this because I'm sitting there on the windowsill and I'm experiencing this ecstasy, this love, this unity with the universe, and I'm having a conversation with Mary Fran and Nolan, and my face was just had this huge grin on it
Oh, wow.
because I am so loved and am loving, and this is a place of ecstasy. And I knew because we had just lost Nolan, seconds before, that if anybody had looked at me, it would have been entirely inappropriate what was on my face. So I did the only thing I could think of, which was to, cover my face with my hands and be in that posture until that other part of me came back. We were reunited in this physical body. I could regain control of myself, and then I could take my hands down and, join the others in the room who were, actively grieving for the loss of both Mary Fran and Nolan. So not only was I in the light, but I was also in two places at once. And boy, that's hard to tell somebody
Yes.
without them going, "Oh, Taylor, we got a little white coat for you."
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, at least I think things have changed a little bit. Like I was saying in the intro, that I think people are starting to accept that it's pretty normal, natural, and it's not something that's so weird and freaky. So,
Well, let's face it, Harry Potter had a near-death experience in his last film. He got into a battle with he who should not be named, was killed, went up and met with Dumbledore, discovered all kinds of things he should not have known,
yeah.
and then came back to his physical life. So yes, there is that.
Hmm.
And culturally, we have really come a long way in the last decade. All right, I'm going to go off camera here for just a second because I have a visual aid that I didn't know I was going to use. So hold on, Royce.
All right. Let's talk about him while he's gone, right?
Here we go.
So interesting. I think I shared in one of my previous shows that I've never personally had a near-death experience, but I have had out-of-body experiences. So I do understand what Scott is talking about. Okay, visual aid.
Visual aid. So 10 years ago ish, if you had Googled death and clicked on the images button, what would have showed up is this,
Oh, God.
right?
For
What
those
would
of
have
you
showed
listening
up?
and not visualizing, it was the
It's the Grim Reaper.
Grim Reaper. Yes.
And it's very cold, it's very solitary, it seems capricious, it's dark. Everything about death was kind of hidden and unknowable. And if you do that same test today, what will happen is you'll get this image.
Oh, wow. Going to
You're
the
going to
light.
get the light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And the light at the end of the tunnel, it's an awakening. It's a returning home. It's a bright light taking you out of darkness and into the light. It's in this light, there's a reunion with your dead relatives. So it's a very happy occasion. And, you get to go back and touch the light of God. And everything about it is 180 degrees different than what it was. And that is, I believe, the due to the efforts of IANDS, IANDS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and all of the research and books that they published, and probably the Department of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia, DOPS. They've done a lot of research on this one, very academic. But it has completely changed the culture. I mean, back when we had soap operas and there were writers that actually wrote, there wasn't a soap opera star that didn't have a near-death experience. They were always dying and then coming back to life again. And,
Yeah,
so
that's very true.
it's very, it's an integral part of our culture now. Death isn't anywhere near as scary as it once was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I have to ask, and okay, how should I put this? I am of the belief, and I've been teaching for 4 decades, this particular
Well, happy anniversary.
notion. Oh, thank you. It's more than 4 decades, but we won't go there. Anyway, I have been teaching that nothing is a coincidence. Everything happens, I use the cliche, everything happens for a reason, but I go one step further, and that is that everything is chosen on some level.
Mm-hmm.
So why would someone choose to go through this? I mean, yes, there's so many amazing lessons and questions that get answered and perceptions that change and all of that stuff. But, I find that if we need to learn something, it's going to hit us on the head until we get it. Do you have the same feeling about near-death experiences?
I do. To your point about things being arranged, I am very clear about how that happens now. After similarly, I, was with Monroe Institute doing this, and then now I've retired and continue to do this research. There are a group of beings that help us organize our life in the physical world. And we come and we sit down with them and go, I'd like to do this kind of a mission, and I'd like to learn these kinds of lessons. So therefore you should have this mother and brother and sister and be born here. And, you can arrange it so that there is this likelihood that you can accomplish your mission more often than not. So, as I told you, I grew up in the Presbyterian Church. And after I had my experience, it occurred to me that if Jesus was opening up and decided that he was going to come into this physical world and he was going to organize everything, he needed somebody to betray him. Who would that be? Well, now having this different perspective, I believe that it has to be Jesus's best friend. Because who would do that for another? That they would so sacrifice themselves so that he could accomplish his mission.
Mm.
It's an extraordinary gift from one being to another. I mean, let's face it, Judas Iscariot has been reviled for 2,000 years. The poor guy can't get a break.
Right. Yes.
But Jesus couldn't be Jesus without that.
That's
He
true.
can't have what we all have discovered about the non-physical universe without somebody who helped open the door. And I have the same feeling about near-death experiences, that they are wonderful, terrible gifts. The gifts that I have received because of Mary Fran and Nolan's transition are extraordinary. And what a terrible thing to lose two precious souls who were a gift, and the world is poor for them not being here. So, yes, I think that that we arrange these things, and at the same time that we benefit from them at a terrible price from the viewpoint of the physical world, and a beautiful gift from the viewpoint of our everlasting non-physical universe.
Yeah. Do you find that there's still a lot of skepticism about this? Because I've heard people, maybe not so much in the last few years, but before that, there were a lot of people that would say, oh, it was just because of the drugs that you were on, or, oh, it was because of this, that, and the other thing. Do you still hear that sort of thing from people?
You know, it's interesting because last weekend I was at the International Association for Near-Death Studies. Yeah, their conference was in Washington, D.C., and it was fabulous. It was huge. We had, 720 some people come to this thing. It was wonderful. I've been doing the MC work there for ages. And when I first joined, say 20 years ago, and I went to a conference, half of the presentations would be statistical grids, complete with standard deviations. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so boring. And what they were trying to do was to justify that near-death experiences are real. We have moved way beyond that now. The science behind near-death experiences is largely settled, although there's always something that you can learn. But now it's about the question from my dissertation: how do you live with what you know? And this year's conference was about the active use of love, that when people come back or touch the light, they have a different concept of what love is and how we can bring that into fruition here in the physical world. So it's very different now. People believe mostly that these things are real. It's part of our culture. And if they don't, look at this, another prop. This is a book by Dr. Bruce Grayson. He was one. It's called After, and he was one of the founders of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And that book is a summary of all of the scientific research that's been done in 50 years, and he wrote it in a very popular way. So it's easily accessible, and it pretty much lays it out. These are all the theories that people have proposed, hypoxia and drug use, and my favorite one. I love this. It's a recreation of the birth process, yeah, go to the light.
Wow.
And no, that's not what it is. It's its own thing. And so, yeah, it's in the culture now, and most people believe it. And when you don't, you can point them to, there's some terrific books out there, and they can read up and go, oh, really? We've studied this extensively in the highest ranked universities in the world, and the science is good. This is a real deal thing.
Yeah. Well, we need to take a bit of a break. And just to let you guys know, listening and watching, I'm talking with Dr. Scott Taylor about near-death experiences and all the research that he has done. And he's going to tell us about some really interesting stuff that he's doing with people to assist them in experiencing near death without having to do all the dramatic physical stuff to get there. So yeah, so we'll be right back.
OMTimes TV. Do you crave joy but feel stuck? Do you go through life feeling constantly triggered and frustrated? Fear is likely the culprit, and subconscious fear is likely sabotaging you. Perfect Life Awakening is a time-tested, spiritually based approach to inner transformation created by Royce Morales. For over 40 years, she has helped people get to the origins of subconscious fears and ultimately help them find their true purpose and a life full of joy. Sign up for Perfect Life Awakening today at roycemorales.com. You deserve to go from triggered to empowered, shifting your life with Perfect Life Awakening. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. OMTimes Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, OMTimes offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an OMTimes magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on OMTimes TV and broadcasting it across the extensive OMTimes radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. OMTimes. Open yourself to the possibilities.
I want to eat apples and bananas. I need to eat apples and bananas. Why can't I eat apples and bananas?
Support the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks to help provide meals to those in need. Join us at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back. I'm talking to Dr. Scott Taylor about near-death experiences, and I would love to have you explain to us the work that you're doing to assist people in journeying and discovering the experience of near-death experience without having to go through all the physical manifestations. Tell us about that.
Wow, that's a fun thing.
Yes.
So when I finished my dissertation, what you usually do is you take this, 300-page thing and you turn it into a book that is available for the public to read. And so I went into a meditation one day and I asked my higher self, my guides, how am I going to do that? What are the themes that people would really resonate? And what I got was, Scott, the world doesn't need another book about near-death experiences. What it needs is the experience.
Mm.
And I went, whoa, that's really interesting. How do I do that? And what I got back from my guides, crickets. Nothing. Nada.
Oh, don't you love when that happens?
And I asked them like 20 times, you guys can't just be quiet? Well, yeah, they can. So
they do a lot.
So it took me 10 years to figure out how to help people enter into expanded states of awareness and follow a really well-worn path, because millions of people have had near-death experiences. So that energetic pathway from our physical body through the tunnel to the light to the past life experience to reunion with the beings of light, that area of life between lives, the normal progression that happens when people have near-death experiences is really well laid out for us. And it turns out that each of those segments have a slightly different vibratory level. Thus, one of the really wonderful technologies that has come as a result of Bob Monroe is the development of binaural beats, which is a audio technology where headphones and there's a mix of um, sound patterns that can take you to those vibratory frequencies that are really close to where you meet your guide, when you go down the tunnel, when you go into the white light, when the life review. So, once you've figured, you can use that. And then I happen to like guided meditations because beginners don't have to wonder about what to do or how to do it. And so that's what we do. Right behind me are the albums from the Into the Light series. And what they do is by wearing these headphones, you are put into states of expanded awareness that match those various stages of a near death experience. And yes, no physical trauma required. So always a good thing. So we have access to those same areas. We can talk to our dead relatives. We can explore what they're doing. They can show us around. Yeah, it's a it's a really remarkable thing that we're able to do now that we couldn't do, 15 years ago.
And what is the success rate? Does it always
It
work,
always
or
works.
how? Wow.
Yeah, it's a remarkable thing about binaural beats. If you're a willing participant and you wear the headphones, you will be in that state of expanded awareness. Period. End of statement. It always works.
Wow.
However, it's really helpful to know what to do when you get there.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, instead of just floating around, you say, well, you can go here and turn left and say hi. And I mean, I'm being a little funny there, but it does help. And, that's what you can do. And there's guidance manuals and the albums to do that. There's classes you can take. And now it's open to everybody.
Wow. So when they're in that state, they're by themselves, or are you with them, or is there a guide of some kind that's with them that tells them what to do or suggests various things?
Well, thank you for that little softball. I appreciate it. The the very first skill that I like people to learn is to identify who their guide is and to enter into an active conversation with that guide, because let's face it, guides live there. And so when you say, I really want to go to have a reunion with my dead relatives, they go, I know just the place. I know how to send out the invitations. Done. Poof. And off you go. Or you say, I want to go to that area where I can do my life review. Know exactly where that is. Come on, Scott, let's go. And off you go. So I find that having guidance or having an active relationship with one's guide, one's higher self, name your nomenclature, but it's really helpful because you don't have to do this all on your own. They can help out. So thank you for that question, because guides are, they just love you to death, and they want you to have the best experience, and they want you to carry out your mission. And if you need some information or you need an experience, they're all over that. So it's like, hey, I'd really like this info. Okay. So yeah, it works.
Wow. And so people come back and they basically have the same life shifts that a person that had a quote real NDE has.
Yeah. The difference, of course, is you can imagine in a true near-death experience, it's like being tossed into the deep end of a pool and you didn't know there was a pool. It's just like, boom, you're in this alien environment and you don't know what's happening. Well, it was, the same thing happened with, Mary Fran Nolan and I'm in this place and I'm overwhelmed, and all I can do, is just focus on the three of us there at the moment and then come back. Well, I mean, there's this amazing place that, I could have stayed and explored and gone back to. So I forgot where I was going with that. Help me out. What was your question?
I think I'm in kind of a higher consciousness state whenever I do these things. And so I think what I asked is, do they have the same?
Oh, yes. Thank you. That's it. Exactly.
There we go. Thank you.
So what we're trying to do is develop a technique that's kinder and gentler. And so is the experience as immersive and as overwhelming? No, it's not, by design.
Yeah.
This is where we know there's a pool. We get in at the shallow end. We dip our toe in, then we put our foot in, and then we walk towards the deep end. And along the way, we learn to swim. And by the time we get to the deep end, we know our way around and are very comfortable in the world of the afterlife. And we have a whole set of tools that allow us to navigate. So, yeah, is it the same experience? No. Do you get to the same places? Yeah. Do you get to have the same kind of changes? Yeah, you do. People, when they do this work, they come back and go, the whole point of doing this work is to have more peace and joy in your physical life now. It's not about that transition that's going to happen someday. That's set. And so now what we do is we can learn to live here in the physical world and not stress about what's going to happen then. And because we have a different perspective, we can look on people and events and go, I wonder what the higher meaning is for this. Why are we going through this particular event in our life right now? What's important about that we need to know? And look at it from this higher perspective of saying, there are lessons that are being taught. I'm going to see if I can listen and pay attention and then do something about it so that my life is good.
Do you find that people actually do those things that they're instructed to or awakened to? Because I find that, everything you're saying is stuff that I teach in my classes, and we don't go to those places necessarily. Some of my students do, but I find that once they return into their everyday consciousness, all the fears and all the stuff gets in the way, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't do what they're supposed to do with all that. What is this? I keep saying success ratio. It sounds so lawyerly, but what happens? Yeah.
And yes, the whole point of doing this work is to integrate it into your life.
Yes.
And I find, like you probably, that some people are all over it and then boom, in they go. Some people are stop and start, and other people just kind of nibble, along the way, and they go, oh yeah, I remember I can do this, and I have a different perspective now, I think. And then, and so it's like, how comfortable are you with jumping off for this great change in your life? Do you, what do you want?
Yeah.
Because the nice thing about working with binaural beats is that it's very precise and very effective. So you can do exercises again and again and can trust that you're going back to the same spot so that you can perfect and use the tools that you've been taught. Cool thing is that after you've done it, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 times, you don't need binaural beats anymore because it's a learned skill.
Mhm.
You can close your eyes and imagine what it felt like, or imagine, in your mind, for me, when I go meet my guide, it's in a library with leather chairs and a big fireplace. And, all I have to do is remember what the fireplace smelled like, and poof, I'm there and can have a
Yeah.
conversation with my guide. So it's like, how badly do you want it? And when I had my experience with Mary Fran and Nolan, um, I was driven because I had been to a place that was extraordinary, and because I had been there once, I knew that I could go back there again. I just had to figure out how. So, okay. It took 10 years, but it, we did it. We did it.
Wow. So tell us, I read in your bio that you offer 5-day seminars and all kinds of things. What is available to the listeners and watchers? What can they get from you?
Why, sure. If you want to put your toe in the water, I would recommend picking up these albums and giving it a try. See if you like binaural beats, if you relate to them, if you relate to my voice. And you can get that at hemi-sync.com. All of them are listed on my website, which is NearDeath Meditations, plural, NearDeathMeditations.com. And those of you that are into the Shift Network, SHIFT, Shift Network, say that carefully.
Right.
I teach an introductory class, and in this, one of the benefits that came out of my experience with Mary Fran and Nolan is that I had the experience of bilocation. And as it turns out, it's a really easy skill to teach people in meditation. The idea that you can be in your chair and you can be up in an expanded state of awareness all at the same time. And so we teach an intro to bilocation, and we teach an advanced class to bilocation. And what we use is the cosmology of a near-death experience as the framework for how to explore the non-physical universe. Shiftnetwork.com. So there you go. You get 3 different ways to enjoy what binaural beats can do for you.
Yeah. What does the word binaural mean? Why are they called binaural?
Oh, sure. That's a great question. So what in the early days, and this was discovered, way back when, like the 1880s, if you were wearing headphones and you put one tone into one ear, say 100 hertz, and you put a slightly different tone into the other ear, say 104 hertz, the brain tries to equalize those 2 sounds, and it can't because they're inherently different. And then the brain does this really wonderful thing, is that it sets up a third tone, which is the difference between the 2. So 100, 104, and all of a sudden it starts to hear 4. Ooh. And if that was the case, we'd put you right to deep sleep, because Royce, that's the frequency of deep sleep. And the brain then starts to vibrate. The whole thing, it doesn't operate in 2 hemispheres anymore. It operates as one unit vibrating at 4. And then the magic of Bob Monroe was then you start to layer in other sound frequencies, and those frequencies, that cake mix of frequencies, winds up being very specific and could take you to specific altered states of expanded awareness. So that's cool. And I mean, it's just sound. I mean, they're headphones. You don't have to ingest any chemicals. You don't have to sit and look at a brick wall for 20 years. You can do this like right now,
Wow.
you know, all for
It's interesting.
$25.
It's so interesting. I'm listening to this because my husband he suffered a stroke about 9 years ago. And
Oh,
they're always talking about the left and right hemispheres of the brain and how, the brain is plastic and it can read
yep,
synapse
yep,
itself. And is there any research in terms of that sort of thing using sound?
absolutely. And in fact, at hemi-sync.com, there's a special album for people who've had strokes
Hmm.
because it does exactly what you said. The brain creates new neural pathways as it's trying to equalize those two sounds. And as a result, then it can move around those areas that are blocked or there's damaged, and they can, start to regain some function again.
Wow.
So it's a lovely thing.
I will definitely invest in it. That's great to know. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, what final thoughts do you have that you'd like to leave our audience with? Give us your amazing philosophy of all this, or
Okay.
hint.
The philosophy of all there is. Here we go. Um, in the process of doing this work, I've discovered, along with many other people, but I've had the experience that consciousness is fundamental and irreducible. It is what the universe is made of. That is the building block of the universe is consciousness. And I would like to add a different, I'd like to add an adjective to that, and that is loving. I believe that the universe is a loving consciousness that from which all things are created. Time, space, matter, all comes out of consciousness. And it's an extraordinary place to visit. You can do it into some people call it source, but that place before form and outside of time and space, it's an extraordinary place to be.
Mhm.
And it is the thing that allows us to manifest in this world. And because it's loving, we are all part of this loving universe. We are not ever separate from it because we are it. And that's nice to know that we can never be separated from loving consciousness.
Wow. Brought chills. Thank you so much. Give out your contact information one more time for those that are
Go
sitting
to
here.
neardeathmeditations.com, and from there, we'll send you wherever you need to go, to the albums, to the courses, neardeathmeditations.com. Thanks, Royce. I appreciate the commercial.
I appreciate you being here. That's wonderful. You've been hearing Dr. Scott Taylor, amazing human. And I would just like to end by saying that with all of that in mind, with everything that you've said, your life in this physical plane can be as it is on the other side by doing some work, whether it be through binaural beats or inner processing like I offer, or whatever it is that pulls you toward whatever it is you're supposed to do in life. Do it, deserve to do it, be your true authentic self. And thank you again, Scott. It was great.
Thank you, Royce. You're wonderful. I appreciate
So are
I
you.
appreciate our conversation. We had fun, didn't we?
We did, yes. Thank you. I'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Bye now.
Bye.